What a week 8 it was. Happy days for some, depressing for others. uh, Welcome to the All 32 Pod. Mike Giardi alongside Will Parkinson. As always, a reminder, this show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network and Game Time. Best tickets, best prices. So you get to see any event that you want to see. Will, we're going to jump right into it. Patriots, Jets in my backyard yesterday. Huge game for the Jets based on how they've been playing. Lost 4 in a row after beating the Patriots on that, what now seems like eons ago, that Thursday night game in Jersey. Patriots, of course, had lost 6 straight. Coach calls them soft, tries to walk it back. End of the day, Patriots win 25-22. And while there's plenty to talk about with the Patriots, I think the obvious starting point here is the Jets. As you and I were texting during the game, I mean, I know mathematically it's still possible, but sure feels like that team is dead where they stand.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of trades and what could happen in the future, Thursday is the biggest indication. Because if they beat Houston, you can talk yourself into we'll be 5-6 to buy, and we lost to the Patriots, but we beat Houston, so we're kind of net even, whatever. We'll talk about that when we get to it when we record on Thursday, and we'll preview that game. But from all intents and purposes, it's felt like every single week between kicking, special teams in general for the Jets, Brent Boyer, who's been the special teams coach for 3 regimes now, which is pretty much you never see in the NFL. Mike Westhoff's one of the only guys I've seen survive like that, coaching staff to coaching staff, and just always, because he's probably the best ever. Brent Boyer is not the best ever. He's a good football coach, and that's great. The Jets special teams have been a huge issue this year. I believe over the last 3 or 4 years, every year DVOA, top 5 defense, top 5 specials, and the worst or second worst offense, right? And that's the whole thing building this thing was load up on the offense. They just got a status quo. Even if they drop off a little bit, they'll be all right. And, we'll get to the offense in a moment, but I think the biggest issue for me yesterday was 2 things happened. As much as Drake Maye was doing well against the Patriots and against the Jets, I am not taking anything away from him at all. It felt like the second he went out, the Jets just stopped playing defense. And I feel like it was like that was their point of adversity yesterday. I felt like when he went out, what was it, 13-7, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't come back out for that next drive. And I'm looking at, I'm getting texts from you and a lot of our colleagues in the media and my brothers and everyone saying, hey, this game's over. Drake May's out. They should blow him out. And I'm thinking, yeah, they should. But in the back of my head, I'm like, this is a team that handles adversity worse than anybody probably in the league. And it felt like the defense, majority of the time, stopped trying. Stop trying. I'm not implying they quit. Okay. Like, that's just want to make sure that doesn't. But my point being, like, it was like, oh, we don't have to be as locked in as we probably just were. And it felt like the offense was like, oh, we'll just coast. We kind of figured it out here and 2 touchdown drives in a row, and we've moved the ball all 4 drives. Like, we're good. The Jets have the worst kicker in the NFL this year. Greg Zuerlein's a really good player, and that's all great. He's 9 of 15, and as well as missed, I believe, 2 or 3 extra points in 7 weeks or 8 weeks. 6 missed field goals, multiple extra points. The Jets have a lot of issues. If they had a kicker, they'd probably be 5-3 or 6-2 right now, and that's like any of the NFL, and Patriots fans will know this better than anybody. Belichick used to talk about this all the time. 90% of the NFL is not losing football games. That's how he used to beat the Jets every time. It was like Devin McCourty told a famous story on my podcast about them playing Zach Wilson in 2022. Mike, you were at that game. The Jets were 6-2. If I'm not mistaken, they're 5-2. The Patriots 3-4 or somewhere in that range. Zach Wilson's not playing terrible football. The Jets are rolling. Finally the Patriots have Brady. Finally, they have a much better team. And Bill told them all week, do not lose this game. Not like don't go win. Just do not make mistakes. Make our kicks. Don't turn the football over. Stay at your assignment, and you will turn them over. The Jets will beat themselves, and that's what they did yesterday. The Patriots tried damn hard to beat themselves, but the Jets missing kicks. The play clock stuff was a disaster because Rodgers needs everything to be perfect right now because he can't move and he needs to see everything, doesn't want to get hit. So he's audibling and waving downing off. And then they had anything. There's so much to unpack from this game because I felt like there's a building moment there a little bit for New England, but this was such a encapsulation of all the things that have gone wrong for the Jets over the last really 15 years, kind of all mixed into one game. And, the Patriots are now in second place in the division or whatever it was at this point.
Yeah, it's bananas. The Rodgers question, and I think we talked about it leading up to the game in our preview pod about some of the stats coming into the game indicate that he's playing the worst football of his career. And what I saw in person was a guy who is 40 who looked like he was playing 60. He was 60. He's struggling to move and doesn't. And look, no quarterback wants to take contact, but he really didn't want to take any contact yesterday. So the quarterback that the Patriots got beat by in week 3, that wasn't the same guy that you saw Sunday at Gillette Stadium. I mean, just pretty much stuck in the pocket. And even Patriot defenders talking about afterwards, like, man, he ain't right. Like Devon Gottschall basically saying, if at 330 pounds, if I can chase him down, it's kind of sad to see. But I wonder part of this too, like the Patriots had an approach for him yesterday. They went back and watched film from previous meetings with Aaron, and they said, look, he loves to find the matchup that he can exploit. And that clearly was Garrett Wilson versus Marcus Jones. And he exploited it pretty well, right? 100 plus yards receiving, whatever, touch, all those things. However, when they were showing the film to the guys, they were like, but sometimes he'll pass up the stuff underneath because he's so beholden to this one matchup that he won't take the easier throws, the open throws. And kind of going through the tape today, there are plenty of throws that he left out.
Devontae could have had 200 yards yesterday. That first half was like, dude, he's open every time. Yeah. And Gonzalez is a great player, and I'm not taking anything away from him. He was sticky yesterday. The play he had down, I thought the play he had on third down that eventually led to the missed field goal was the play of the game. I thought that and the punt return yesterday were the two plays. If the Jets make either of those plays, New England doesn't. This is a borderline of 2-touchdown win easily.
Yep.
But because the Jets don't go in and capitalize there, I don't know if that was at 16-14 or if it was at if it was 17 at that point. I don't remember. I think maybe 17-14 the Jets missed or whatever it was. But Gonzalez makes a great play. But Devontae was open all day long. And like Aaron wasn't throwing it or he was missing him. And it was just he feels so off. And I don't feel like he's playing confident right now at all. And I think, again, there's a lot of things that you could look back on with this Jets team and with Rodgers in particular. But the way Rodgers left that week 3 game was the best he had looked since he won the MVP in 2021, I believe. And he gets rolled, he gets destroyed in the Denver game. And that, I don't know, that game was a sloppy mess. And they go over to London and he takes that shot that I referenced it last week, but that shot, I almost think you look back as hindsight 2020, their season ended right there because he couldn't move anymore. And then once he couldn't move, it eliminates so much of what he's good at. And then they're easy to game plan for. And it's torpedoed. And like, he's not playing confident football, which means the rest of the guys, you're feeding off this guy that you've been told for now 18 months, right? Ish. He's the only thing you need. Like, if you just do what you were doing now and he comes in, and when he's not, it's just an unfair, even to ask Tom in his prime or whoever, like, you're asking a lot of anybody, let alone a guy who's playing on a pulled, probably and pretty clearly injured hamstring, which is, I think, the biggest reason why he can't move is because he thinks that he's feels like if he moves too much, it's going to pop. And I don't blame him. I don't know. I didn't mean to cut you out there. I'm watching back to him like Devontae's open, Garrett's open. Conklin had whatever he wanted yesterday. They only gave him 3 targets, which made no sense, especially with no Peppers, especially with no Duggar. Like, he beat, again, 2 games. He's got, 8 for 150 and a touchdown or 2 against New England. Like, why did they go to him 3 times? Brees had whatever he wanted. And then for them to only have 22 points there and then let Jacoby carve him up in Sauce, this year's frustrating. Like, I don't know how much you've felt this, but Keyshawn Butte, who is not good, and then on top of that had 12 drops in this game after calling out like he was prime Randy Moss.
Yeah.
That route, I think that I could have probably T-stepped a little better than Sauce. I don't know what Sauce was doing. It was an encapsulation of an absolute mess yesterday. Credit to New England, though. They obviously took advantage.
You talked about in the beginning when I first posed you the game about the adversity and this team dealing with adversity worse than any team in the league. And this is no big, huge 30,000 foot question. How do they address that? Because the roster is what it is. And, you went out and traded for Devontae Adams. They did. They went in on Tyron Smith, which was the right thing to do at the time. They had to upgrade their offensive line. Morgan Moses, on and on it goes. They built this team for now because the quarterback has to be for now. But if you're having come to Jesus moments with the guy you just acquired 6-7 days ago and Devontae Adams giving the post-game speech, and then you go into New England and lose to a team that was 1-6, had lost 6 in a row, and was just getting curb stomped everywhere they went. It's like, I can't imagine what that locker room is like right now, because the term was darkness, right? There are days of darkness.
Yeah, you got to embrace the darkness.
Yeah. They're in the darkness, man. I don't know if they know where the light switch is.
I think that guys they're in a very, very, very turning point. Yesterday probably was. The issue is that, like,
shouldn't have been that yesterday shouldn't have to be the turn. You know what I mean? That turning point. Like, there's like 3 different times the season should have turned.
We talked about the same thing about right before Buffalo, right before Pittsburgh, right before New England, even before the Minnesota game. I think the one thing, and I know we're spending a lot of time on the Jets here, but a couple of things that I wanted to kind of get your opinion on, and one of which is what they do with trading guys off or not. And again, we'll talk about that more after Thursday, just because I think they'll wait at that point. Joe Douglas is a lame duck GM. He's going to be fired either soon or after the year, relieved of his contract. They're going to have to overhaul everything. I don't know what they do with some of these guys, because, like, yeah, you probably do trade a Mike Williams. Even if you win, I don't know, Mike Williams should probably move anyways. DJ Reed, I think if you lose on Thursday, you move on, because a contending team, it's a Pro Bowl level corner you could get. And, he has not a lot of money left on that deal, obviously expiring. Does someone kick the tires on Tyron Smith with very little money remaining that has an injury? If you're the Bucs or the Browns, if the Browns figure it out, win 2 in a row here, and, like, I don't know, they're just using examples of teams with tackle problems. Do they kick the tires? So the Jets are going to want to get a look at Olu. The kind of questions for me on the Jets are, how do you handle the second tier starter veterans, a Tyler Conklin, a Jamie Sherwood, and a Morgan Moses, all who are average or above level starters that are not going to get paid massive amounts of money? At some point, in my opinion, you keep those guys and you try to extend them, because as you go into a rebuild, like, you do need players. And a first-year GM, first-year coach is going to try to get that first-year, hey, we won 8 games and we were supposed to win 4, and, like, that just bought me 3. The Giants example, right? Like, you want to win 9 or 10 games that year, first year, because it buys you time. The other question is, Mike, like, who's taking this job? I talked a little bit about it. I tweeted about it. Like, yeah, it's not going to happen. But just for argument's sake, Pete Carroll comes in and he's like, hey, I don't want to coach anymore. That Bill Parcells model of let me oversee everything and, like, kind of correct a lot of your infrastructure problems. Mike Vrabel makes all the sense in the world for the Jets, but is Mike Vrabel going to take that job? I have no idea. And GM search, it's anybody's guess. I threw out Ray Agnew because he's been with the Rams and Lions and kind of reestablished the culture. And then I don't know, is there anyone that comes to mind for you that you're like, Ulbricht's not going to be back realistically? Like Joe Douglas isn't either. Where do you see this kind of going? Even though it's insane, we're talking about this on October 28th.
Not expected. Vrabel makes a sense in a lot of ways, because I think they're desperate for a program culture guy, and he did help build a program in Tennessee. And yes, it went bad at the very end, as the roster sort of disintegrated and he couldn't keep it together anymore. And that could be as much about John Robinson. And then first year GM Rand Carthon is now in year 2, and Carthon ends up winning the quote unquote the power struggle, although it wasn't a massive power struggle. It's just sort of a differing of opinions there. And Amy Strunk the owner wanted to go with Carthon because he was embracing this whole collaborative thing. I don't know that the Jets need a collaborative thing. I think the Jets need someone who is in control, period, end of story. And the Adam Gases and the Robert Salas, with their backgrounds, the hot young assistant coach or whatever. No, I think they need someone who's been there, done that, and is about to do it again. And you have that resume already. And, like, for all that happened poorly in Tennessee at the end, Mike had a ton of respect from the players in the locker room. They played hard for him right until the very end. And because they saw a number of times where we don't have it. we're not the better team. We got guys on the injury report. We know our roster's not that great, and somehow, some way, you're beating Kansas City, or you're taking Kansas City into overtime. There's all these examples the last couple of years where that team had no business being in games, and by excellent coaching, putting guys in positions where they could be successful and limiting their weaknesses, that they were able to stay in those games or win those games. And to me, that sort of, the Jets lose games all the time that they shouldn't lose. They need to somehow, some way, they need to reverse that. And I feel like he would be an ideal candidate from the building perspective and from the culture perspective, and just from he's a hard ass. Like, you're not going to, even though, as I said, the players loved him, there were rules in place. Like, you had to take care of your business. My question for him is, would he, if Rodgers is back, does he want that? Does he want his first year to be Rodgers is likely his last year? And on all that goes with being Aaron's coach and having to sort of, in some ways, turn the offense over to him. And then the media aspect of it. And not that Mike is bad at media. He can be excellent, but he's also feisty. He's combative. And I've said in many a press conference where he just got disgusted by the question, would cut pressures short, or, just destroy the question. To his credit, sometimes in the same press conference, or sometimes generally the very next day, that same person could ask a question and he would answer it. Like, and sometimes he would even say, like, hey, I was in a bad way yesterday. Like, lost the game, couldn't get it out of my head, was just angry. I don't know if that flies in New York.
Yeah. No,
like, just the amount of attention. I mean, we're talking in Tennessee, like, they are the only thing in town, really, for all intents and purposes. And yet the media contingent's not huge. It's massive in New York. Everything he does gets magnified.
The one thing I'm going to move on, obviously, here. The one thing I would say is, I almost think the Jets need that, because so much of, if you look at in the New York landscape right now, pretty much every team sports team outside of the Jets and Giants is quite good right now. Robert Saleh was great with the media, very, very cozy with the media. I'm Gase, whether he let you know it or not, very, very cozy and cushy with the media. I look at Tom Thibodeau, who's kind of Vrabel-ish in a lot of ways, of like really overachieving, kind of some of their parts. And maybe it's not a great example, but like Tibbs came in and was like, enough. Like, I don't care about the media. I don't care about anything else. I care about, like, we are going to play 82 games as hard as possible, and like whatever happens, happens. And yeah, not everyone's a huge fan of Tibbs' style and all these different things, but like, he's a horrible person for their New York culture, right? He's like a 6 foot, like 260-pound fat dude walking on the sidelines, yelling at people, calling him a mother effer every 2 seconds. Like, I almost, maybe the Jets need that. Do they need, like, that's the whole Pete Carroll thing is, like, do they bring in a guy who's in his 70s, but like still obviously wants to be around ball? Like, can he come in and be like, hey, we're going to invest in analytics? The Jets have 4 people in their analytics department. 2 of them are not even full-time. They're interns. Someone tweeted out yesterday, the Jets have 40 plus people in social media and ticketing, and they have 14 people in their scouting department, or whatever it was. It was like, how is that even possible?
That's not great.
The one thing I wanted to touch on last thing in this game, Drake Maye looked really good. It was very small sample size. He did a lot of things yesterday that you just have not seen Patriots quarterbacks do. And I don't know how severe the concussion is or not, but I think if you're a Patriots fan, you should feel this is the best it's been 3 games, like 2.5, 2.25. Like, I think they have a franchise quarterback. I'd feel much better if I was a Patriots fan this morning than if I was a Dolphins fan. I just would.
Oh, I'm 100% with you on the way Drake played. I'm not going to go franchise quarterback yet. I mean, look, they're building.
He shows all the signs.
Yes, he's showing all the signs. The throw he made to Tyquan Thornton outside the pocket,
Catch
30 yards down the field.
Oh,
yes.
my God.
And like, the contact came a little bit early. It did. The defensive back got there a split second early. The ball still hits you in the freaking chest. Like, that's a dime. Like, that's a beautiful throw. His instincts, and look, the instincts end up in part getting him the injury, right? Because he takes off and runs for 18 yards, slid late. People are debating whether it was a dirty hit. I don't think it was the intention was to be dirty. It should have been flagged, obviously, because it's helmet to helmet, but whatever. I don't think it was a dirty play.
No.
But the scramble for the 17-yard touchdown, same thing. He just saw it open up. You're going to play man against me? You're going to turn your back on me?
Man.
Yeah,
Saram's
he's
like not a
fast.
slow player. Like
No, he is. Yeah, he's a really good athlete, and you're seeing that. I'll give them credit though, to Patriots in general. Like clearly, this game was a lot about the Jets too. And we just detailed that for the last 17, 18 minutes.
Yeah.
But the coach called them soft. Tried to walk it back. They had all kinds of noise with the receivers this past week. Receivers generally played like crap yesterday. I think 5 drops. Just an absolute mess. But they didn't turtle with Brissett. The crowd was uneasy. They ran 5 of the first 6 times. Brissett was in there on the first 2 series, kind of like resetting the process.
The end of the half was a disaster, by the way. Just be honest. That was
and then the punt return to spark things in the third quarter, give you the short field, get the touchdown. And then all of a sudden there was energy back in the building again. They're like, hey, we could beat the Jets, not just for the players, I think, but for the fan base. And the fan base hates the Jets. So there really was a good bit of life in the stadium yesterday for the first time in a long time. I actually thought there was more life in the stadium for this game than there was for Drake's debut against the Texans. So credit to them for not turtling. I think they answered not like definitively about the soft thing because they still couldn't run the football. There's all this talk afterwards about how body blows. Like, dude, get out of here. 25 carries for 54 yards from your running backs. Like, let's relax. That's an impotent offense. And as someone pointed out today, if you take away the quarterback scrambles, and Jacoby had a big one as well on the game-winning drive, 18-yard scramble for Maye, 17-yard scramble for the touchdown. Brissett had a 14-yard scramble. You had 190 yards of total offense. So not knocking it. You showed toughness. You played hard. You needed a win. We talked about it on last week. I'm like, if you won 3-2, it didn't matter. You just needed a win to change the vibe. They changed the vibe. They feel good about themselves, but they're still a long way from being a good football team. They got to stack this now, and they've got an opportunity, right? Tennessee this weekend. Tennessee is an abject disaster right now. Like,
had to fire Mike Vrabel though.
Right. Your Vrabel is probably smoking a cigar somewhere, laughing a little bit. Like, okay, you chose Ran over me. And Brian Callahan can't get that team to respond at all. And Brian Callahan could be is a strong candidate to be a one and done, whether that's fair or not. That's just kind of the way they're trending. And lastly, I'll just say about the Pats, just sort of like a bit of an old school approach. I mentioned how they dealt with Rodgers and going back and looking at the tape from, I'm talking years ago, 5-6 years ago, playing him and like, hey, he'll want to seek this matchup out all the time, and he'll pass up open guys underneath because he just doesn't want to do it. He's decided that's the best place to go. And then just there was some physicality that had been lacking. And again, it didn't produce much results in terms of the run game, but they did a better job of stopping the run. Still wasn't awesome. Again, still gave up 120 yards rushing, but they didn't get run through as they'd been the last 5 or 6 weeks. And they needed it. They got it. And we're going to move on because we spent a lot of time on that game. Let's get to Eagles, Bengals. Bengals needed this one, I thought, kind of badly. Had turned the season around after the 0-4 start, won 3 in a row. They get absolutely smacked by the Eagles, 37-17. Eagles score in their last 6 drives. They score 34 total points. Had 3 straight possessions where they went for touchdowns. First time this season that they've done that. And it was offensively the combination of obviously the big play, which is what they hunt on offense all the time. He's got the Devontae for 45 yards. They're always looking for those one-on-one matchups. But power with Hurts in the run game and power with Saquon, who is, he's playing about as well as anybody in the league right now, isn't he?
Yeah, a couple of things. We talked about the Jets and trading pieces. If I'm the Bengals, it's time. Is there a chance the Jets and Bengals could be who we thought they were preseason and get hot? Yeah, there is. If either team loses this week, it's done, in my opinion. I think Bengals maybe have an extra week, maybe because they already had their bye. But that division's so much better than the AFC East is. I don't see it. I'd trade T. Higgins as soon as he's healthy. He's not coming back. There's absolutely no reason to kind of run this thing into the ground. take some of that money that'll go off your cap, roll it over to next year, and pay Jamar Chase. Like it's
Tell you
simple
what
things.
though, they miss
Oh,
him,
they
man.
need him, but like he's not going to be.
Right.
It's just more like the Jets need DJ Reed. He's not going to be there next year. Like it's read the room, read where your franchise at. Like now they're paying Burrow. They're going to have to go a little cheaper at some options, a little younger, develop the Yoshi Vashes of the world and these guys, and maybe you go smaller there. And they've invested so much money in that offensive line. I don't know what they do on defense in terms of like, I don't know. Do you look and Logan Wilson and Trey Hendrickson both make a lot of money? Those guys are team leaders there. They're their best players on defense, but like
they couldn't sniff Jalen Hurts yesterday.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, do you just kind of totally reset this thing and say, like, we'll do what somewhat of what the Bills did going into this year and say, hey, like, let's reset this thing. Hopefully Joe's healthy and play the way Josh is, and like let's kind of just build this roster, just totally rebuild this roster, on the fly. That's what I'd do if I was Cincinnati, just because I think the Zach Taylor thing will be interesting to see. Like him and Burrow are obviously, kind of done this thing hand in hand, but Zach Taylor's record outside of like it's not the most pleasant thing to look at. If you're Philly, we talked about this on Thursday's show, and I'll keep it, I guess, shorter with Philly. Like the defense is playing finely, generally, except for Fangio. I mean, Nolan Smith on Jamar Chase in the red. I mean, Vic, what are we doing, buddy? It's one of the three best receivers in football getting, whatever. That was just insane. But generally speaking, Philly's doing a lot. They have an identity again. When these guys are all healthy, Jalen still would scare me in a bigger game just because I don't think he's still great. But Saquon's awesome. Devontae Smith is awesome. AJ Brown is awesome. This offensive line will get healthier and is still really good. The Eagles are good. They've been good. I don't think anyone thought they would be bad. I think there were some questions around coaching, Hurts, et cetera. Like those haven't gone away, but this is now, a couple weeks back to back of beating some crappy teams. This was like, oh, yep. I know you beat the Browns and Giants handily. Well, not really the Browns, but now it's like you just went into Cincinnati, smoked a desperate team. So yeah, if I'm Cincinnati, I'm getting that T. Higgins off the injury report as quickly as possible. And because look, at the end of the day, if you're the Bengals and someone team gets desperate, right? Does he go for a 2 because he's a rental that's younger and maybe you have a chance to re-sign him? I don't know if you're the Commanders, aren't you trading a 2 for T. Higgins and saying let's go win this division and maybe we'll re-sign him with money or something like that?
And you have the money. You have the money
to do it,
yep.
As opposed to like in the offseason, I got it. Now as much as I know they'd miss him, if you told me there's a 60 or 50+% chance he's there next year, it's a different conversation. It feels like 10% chance that he's going to get $25 million a year. And again, if you're Washington, which we'll touch on at the end here, like, I don't know, you're 6-2 right now, and the division Cowboys look bad, and the Giants are bad. Like, why can't you go and hey, Jaden, you're going to get, T. Higgins for the rest of the year and Scary Terry, and the way you're playing football, like, we could go win 11 games and be last year's Houston, and then next year we have a much better chance. I don't know. That's just kind of my take out of it. I know I didn't talk as much about the game, but those are just some bigger point things where like the Eagles have an identity and the Bengals are very much where the Jets are of like, we might need to start just selling off and rebuilding this thing a little bit on the fly.
Yeah. Bengals are 3-1 against teams who are under 500. Of course, the one loss being the they would love to take it back, lost to the Patriots in the opener, and then 0-4 against teams with winning records. One quarterback hit, no sacks yesterday. So there's a lot wrong with that roster. To your point about Vic Fangio on the defense, they have an identity, and Cooper DeJean is making an impact.
Him and Quinion
Quinion Mitchell, like that dude, that draft. We could look back at that draft a few years from now and go, woo, they remade the whole defense right there. Young, athletic players, and it's making a difference for sure. And the Eagles to win a second in a row, sort of getting a little bit of momentum. Let's hear from one of our sponsors, Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded millions. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. We, of course, make picks here at the end of the week, every week. And it's fantastic because got a little deal. Had the deal going for a while. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, you don't even have to win with the $5. You still get the 50. So just download the app, use the code CLNS to get $50 after you play your first $5. Prize Picks. Run your game. Should. We'll review some of our
Mike, one thing we're not going to realistically touch on, but I just felt like I had to talk about for 30 seconds. Anthony Richardson saying he was tired.
Oh yeah.
This was something yesterday that I've never heard. I talked to players around the league yesterday that all were like, "There's absolutely no way he said that out loud." They're like, "What? I cannot believe they just saw that." So, Lake Shane's taking a lot.
This
Chris
is
Ballard might have got him in a big. It might be Flacco time, which is again, it's
yeah.
it's
I mean, he said he did say, and I'm sort of reading between the lines, or reading some of the tweets from the Colts beat writers, and they're just talking about how Shane's hard to read, but he did say Anthony's our starting quarterback right now. Interesting sort of we heard a lot of right nows in New England as Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback for the first 5 weeks. Jacoby's the quarterback right now, so yeah, I think he's on the clock a little bit because they've been in every game. I think every game has been decided by 6 points or less for the Colts this year. So would they have an extra win or two if Flacco is playing quarterback for them?
Which is insane to say, by the way.
I know, but that's the power of Joe Flacco, baby. Let's go to the next one. Browns upset the Ravens 29-24. Ravens 5-game win streak is over. They fall to 5-3. And look, there's the whole Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson aspect of this game. I don't really care about the Browns. The Ravens were playing outstanding football offensively. They're one of the best, if not the best offense in the league. Had a few issues yesterday. But to me, this continues to be about their defense, which every time you think might be getting a foothold, they don't. They got torn up yesterday. Zach Orr, again, the first-year defensive coordinator, young guy replacing Mike McDonald, brought in Dean Pease a couple weeks ago, the longtime defensive coordinator who had history with the Ravens and a bunch of other places because they're looking for another set of eyes. Nothing helped. It's not helping. Jameis goes for over 300 yards. Their secondary is struggling, and they had injuries, no Wiggins, Humphrey, Marcus Williams dressed but did not play. Appears to be some sort of discipline thing going on there. Harbaugh said afterwards, like, we're still, he's still going to play good football for us, but something's happening there. So their secondary is a disaster, and it showed against Cleveland, but it's been showing all year long. They're one of the worst pass defense teams in the league. And I don't know, yes, Humphrey back when he's healthy, that makes a difference. But guess what? Hasn't been healthy a ton the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Wiggins has had a hard time staying on the field here in his rookie season. So they're a team that's definitely can win, in my opinion, but they got to figure out a way to fix that defense. And I wonder if they don't start looking at the trade market, saying to themselves, whether it's more bodies in the secondary, whether it's another pass rusher, whether it's both, like they feel like they need to do something because they could piss away a season that quite frankly, I think from an offensive standpoint, they shouldn't let get pissed away.
Yeah, the one thing I'll touch on the Browns, if the Browns fire Kevin Stefanski at the end of this year, it'll be one of the stupidest moves in the NFL. And if I was a Jets fan, if I was a Giants fan, if I was any fan, if I was a Patriots fan, I'd be sprinting to hire Kevin Stefanski. Without Deshaun Watson, he just wins coaches of the year. Yeah, just look at it.
Yep.
Every year when he does not have Deshaun Watson on his roster or playing, Jacoby Brissett, he won 7-8 games that year with Brissett. He won, I believe, 10 or 11 with Cleveland with Baker. Won coach of the year then. They should have beaten Kansas City in that playoff game. Baker could make an out route throw. Last year, they rattled off 8 in a row with Flacco, and it collapsed in the playoffs. But even like yesterday, the second that Deshaun goes out, it's all of a sudden the playbook works again. And I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do in Cleveland because it feels like they're at a crossroads here where at some point the owner is going to have to okay them moving on from him, whether it's a trade or cutting him or whatever it is, and just owning that dead cap. But Andrew Berry feels safe, even though I think it might be the opposite. But what do you do with Myles Garrett? There was the weird trade rumors again. They already traded Cooper. There's other pieces on that team. You maybe want to restart it, but like Stefanski's a damn good football coach. And if you told me the Browns rattled off 3 or 4 in a row here because this is what happens, like I wouldn't be shocked. And it's not because Jameis is good or anything like that. It's just like Stefanski's that good of a damn coach.
It's a good program in place.
Yeah,
There's no question about it.
The Baltimore thing, we've talked for a while. Like the defense hasn't figured it out, and I don't know that they're going to. We're in the November football now, and they kind of get like torched. Like they're not even like a good defense, to be honest with you. And I don't know if it's going out and saying, "Hey, we'll bring Jadeveon Clowney back," who's basically kind of just sitting there and cashing a check, living at home in Carolina, or do they call the Jets and say, "Hey, DJ Reed and Hassan Reddick for a 2 and a 4, and we'll take on the salaries of these guys, and we're hope whatever." I don't know. I'm just whoever it might be, they're not good enough up front, and they're not good enough on the back end. And Roquan can run around like a chicken with his head cut off and trying to hit everybody, and that's great. Him and Kyle Hamilton, but like they're not beating Kansas City if their defense does not improve. And the last thing I'll say in this game, and I know maybe it's just a Twitter thing, the Lamar doesn't have any help thing kind of seems to come up every time they lose a football game. He has plenty of help. Okay. Lamar is amazing. He's a 2-time MVP. I don't care what he does in the regular season. He's reached that point of his career where him and Josh Allen, it's like, you got to beat the Chiefs. You got to beat the Chiefs and split. And that's great. But like, he has plenty of help. So maybe I don't know why that narrative got thrown around yesterday. It seems to happen every time they lose a game. It's like, oh, we got to get Lamar a number 1 receiver. I'm like, dude, the offense is more than good enough. Like, relax. So it's maybe just probably a blip for them, but Ravens that defense has got to get figured out a little bit. And if you're a Browns fan, it's probably best to suck the rest of the year and keep your coach and rebuild this thing. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if they just get hot here randomly for a couple weeks.
Yeah, and the problem with them if sucking is that Haslam, the owner, is such a lunatic that
he'll fire
he'll fire everybody.
Right, and they'll both get jobs in 3 seconds because they're that good.
Yeah. Coverage 0 on the game-winning touchdown to Cedric Tillman, where isolated Eddie Jackson, who's about 146 years old.
Forgot Eddie Cedric Jackson Tillman. Was still in the league for a second.
He got burned twice yesterday. That was a
really good player. Unfortunately, it's not 2014 anymore.
Yeah, it's a different time at a different place. Let's go to Falcons. Beating the Bucs 31-26. Falcons improved to 4-0 in the division, 5-3 overall. Bucs fall to 4-4. Falcons are kind of who we thought they were, right? Like that that first game, the way Kirk looked, and you're like, oh boy. And he's still not totally trusting the Achilles, although he did take off for a pretty important scramble in yesterday's game. But 23 of 29, 276, 4 touchdowns, 2 long touchdowns to Kyle Pitts, Mooney with a long touchdown. Like he's unlocking the pieces that for the last couple of years couldn't be unlocked, particularly, specifically Pitts, who's been, the top 5 pick in basically wasteland for 2 years. So it's all happening for them offensively. Defensively, that's still not a good football team. Feels like they're praying for a mistake. They got a mistake yesterday. It was actually not from the Bucs offense, but from the Bucs special teams. 24-17, Bucs decide to what did they do there? 4th down, turn it over. Short field, boom, it's 31-17, and then the Bucs are in catch-up mode, and they're in catch-up mode without Godwin and Mike Evans, who are out for the game, and still Baker threw for 330, 37 of 50 for 330. So the Bucs moved the football. The Falcons are going to be a team that, much like the Ravens at this point, when they're going to win games, is probably because they're going to have to score in the high 20s to 30s to get it done. But in that division, we said that was a craptastic division, and it wouldn't be surprising if 8-8 won the division. 8-9, 9-8 won the division. 8-8 no longer a thing with the 17-game schedule, and that's sort of how it's playing out.
Yeah, a couple of things. Kirk's kind of having a good year. He's turned the ball over a little bit more, maybe a little bit more than he had in the last couple of years. A little bit more like maybe the 2022 Kirk, higher completion percentage this year than he had that year, but that year he was 2022, if people remember, 4,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 picks. Right now, he's roughly on pace for about 29 touchdowns, 14 picks, higher completion percentage, but similar yardage. That team went 13-4, 13-3, and then lost at home. My one issue with the Falcons is I still feel like they're a roster that is not fully like just haven't consistently strung it together for a month in a row yet. And I'm not saying they've only played 8 games, right? Like, I'm not
Well, I
asking.
mean, to your point though, look at what they had to do in the offseason. Or right before the season started,
Yeah.
you trade for Judon, you sign Simmons. Like, they realized, they looked at the roster and were like, all right, well, we don't have to give up too much for Judon. We can do that because we need a pass rusher desperately. We're still not sure about our back end, even though we had Bates. We want to let's go to the second power with that thing and bring Simmons back there, because they're looking around going, we don't have enough difference makers, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And guess what? Judon and Simmons haven't been difference makers for him so far.
Yeah. So my thing with the Falcons is like, how aggressive is Arthur Blank going to get here? I know we talked a lot about trade deadlines and trade targets and stuff. Do they go, like, I don't even know what they would go after at this point. They kind of are a team that like could use anybody, but doesn't necessarily need anybody. I don't know. They're just another team that I look at. I'm like, Arthur Blank's not getting any younger. He just inducted himself in his own Hall of Fame, which is legit.
Pretty sweet, actually, when you think about it.
Awesome. It's awesome.
You know what? That's how many Fs I give. I'm putting myself in the Hall of Fame.
But he went out and was like, we're paying Kirk, and I don't really care. And that's why it was always like, oh, that's the Belichick team, because it made all the sense in the world. And, obviously so on and so forth. We know the whole deal there. But the Falcons are a good team. I still think like Detroit would run them off the field and, in a 60-minute playoff game. But it's a good time to be a Falcons fan for those who are. The Bucs are so frustrating because I don't think we expected both these guys to be hurt, in Godwin and Evans right now. But me and you talked so much about how this is an 8 to 9 win team because week to week, there's some awesome veterans and they still got it. Even the Levantes of the world and, Vita Vea and all those guys, like they still got it, but there's still holes there. I still think Bowles is like a good coach, not a great coach by any means. I still think he makes like some interesting, very dumb decisions at times, and Baker's very reckless with the football. But all that said, at the same time, like the season's not over for them. But like until, I don't know, if you look at the remaining, like you just look at what the Bucs have going on, the next couple of weeks. You got the Chiefs on Monday night, and then the Niners. Before they have the Giants and Panthers. Like they might be 4-6 before you look, and then they could dig themselves out of it. Giants, Panthers, Raiders. Then the Chargers, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. Like again, you could convince me they could then roll 6 in a row and they get Evans back and they'll fly. But man, these two against the Falcons are going to come back to bite them. Right now are down. You're down a game and a half to them, and Atlanta's got Carolina again too. You know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah.
I think the Bucs' best shot is to get in as a wild card, but they're going to have to probably rattle off 5 of 6. 6 out of 6 to do it. And again, the schedule dictates they can. But, as we've talked about with the Jets and the Bengals and other teams, between injuries and other things, relying on rattling off 5 out of 6 is just not usually the best for business.
Yeah, I mean, being down those two receivers is, again, he threw for 330, but those guys are difference makers. And now he's throwing to Cade Otton 12 times. And Cade Otton's a perfectly fine player, but that's not scaring anybody. And yet they still had a Hail Mary at the end of the game with a chance to win, which is crazy. Bills, Seahawks, 31-10. Bills romp. They're 6-2. They have as many wins now as the rest of the AFC East combined. Rainy, nasty day in Seattle. I thought this was an interesting test for the Bills just to make that trip, face a Mike McDonald defense. Josh hasn't seen it very much. Josh was really good again yesterday, 282 yards, a couple touchdowns, even without a Cooper wasn't very involved yesterday. Played more, just there wasn't much of a connection there. In fact, the one interception came when Cooper slipped on a route and led to the interception. But Keon Coleman elevating, actually getting dapped up by Tariq Woolen, who skied over to get the touchdown, almost like Woolen saying, dude, nobody does that to me at 6'4", which you just did. Nice play. Getting him involved a little bit more. The Khalil Shakir thing continues to be like, that's that's become Josh's whoopee a little bit, just to throw it to him. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick tweeted out last night, targeted him 82 times over the last season and a half, 75 completions. He knows where he's going to be, trusts him, and Shakir makes plays. And the other thing about this game, to me, physically, how they can run the football now and protect the quarterback. Like, their offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in football. Dawkins and Brown at the tackles. I love Osiris Torrance. In fact, he was one of my draft guys a couple of years ago. He's been great for them. David Edwards at guard as well. Connor McGovern at center. They played very well as a unit. Cook rushes for over 100 yards, looks explosive, had all day to sort of pick his spots and go. They're back. They had that little hiccup, and now it seems like they're back. And I think it was a good win. It was a good little litmus test for them offensively, how they would handle a Seattle team. Again, McDonald doesn't have all his pieces in place yet, but they had been playing better. They had gotten some of their front defensive line guys back, Murphy in particular, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, a couple of things. I'll just hit on this game quickly because you encapsulate a lot of what I wanted to hit on in a good way. Both the division's over. Obviously, the Jets and Dolphins have dug themselves horrible holes, and they're not coming out of them. At least not to catch Buffalo. And no offense, the Patriots are not winning. They're not winning the rest next 9 games. But to me, the two things with Seattle that are a little concerning are San Francisco has not figured it out yet, and I don't know if they will. But you lost. It felt like a home game, East Coast team traveling cross country in the game they don't have to have, and you get steamrolled. Not great. Not to lose in that fashion. Buffalo is very good. I don't think that they should be beating anybody, let alone a team that not a team that's supposed to be a contender in the NFC on their own field by 30, by almost 30 points. Like, that's just, or 20 plus, whatever it is. They didn't run the ball at all. I mean, I don't. Buffalo is not great against the run. Like, they're very light through the middle of that defense. That's kind of where you want to attack them. Like, throwing the ball 50 times to them doesn't do you any good. And I mean, 5 carries, 16 yards for Gino, and 9 for 12 for Kenneth Walker, 3 for 4 for Charbonnet. Like, that's effing awful. So yeah, I mean, great Buffalo win. Again, the division's over. Praise to them. Josh has put himself. He hasn't even played great, but his numbers are, especially touchdown interception, are amazing, and he's going to be in the MVP conversation because that's how good of a player he is. But yeah, this was a little bit of a disappointing one. Like, I was expecting a fun game, and we kind of got a steamrolling. We didn't realize we were going to, but that's what we got.
It was a beatdown. Speaking of beatdowns, I don't know if you've been following the World Series, Will.
Oh, you sure about that?
Dodgers up 2-0. Game 3 forthcoming back in New York. And so if you're looking for tickets, I got the place for you. Game Time. They'll get it done. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And obviously, it's a hard ticket to get, and it's an expensive ticket. But
they dropped. They somewhat dropped. Yeah. I might try to go tonight. We'll see.
Oh boy,
I'll know here in a few moments. Might have to use Game Time. Proud sponsor of the pod.
Absolutely. It's the place to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. What time is it? It's game time. So download that sucker. And we're going to end the pod on the play that everybody's talking about for a lot of different reasons. Jaden Daniels' Hail Mary after scrambling around for, 12, 13 seconds. Noah Brown on the receiving end. And they they dominated the game and yet were behind, but end up winning the game, stealing it from the Chicago Bears. Will, just incredible. Like, I'm jumping around my living room, couldn't believe it. Just phenomenal play. And then the social media videos start to come out, and you're wondering what Stevenson is doing. And I'll turn that over to you, as he was the defensive back for Chicago. He's had a rough 24 hours.
He was telling people to go have a nice rest of their afternoon down in the DC area. This was a really fun game. It wasn't necessarily a game I think we were all expecting in terms of lower scoring. I thought both quarterbacks did a lot of really nice things. I know the numbers aren't going to bear it out. They were special by any means, but Caleb to me he's not fully hit like full stride, but it's pretty damn good. And anyone, if you just box score, look at him, you're not gonna every week. I'm not sure you're gonna see quite as much as like he was good yesterday. Like he made a lot of
winning plays in the fourth quarter.
A lot of winning plays in the fourth quarter. Jaden is special, obviously, and this is a big win for them. Like these two teams are probably, if they don't win the division, we're fighting for that 5, 6, or 7 seed. And like Washington having the tiebreaker is huge. Washington keeping pace now, where still leading that division. Dallas is struggling, but that play was special. And Jaden didn't get it out there far enough, but it almost worked out. Obviously in the end. And Devin McCourty talked a lot about this on Sunday Night Football last night, of just like the way these teams just can never figure out the Hail Mary. It's like, we saw Rodgers do it earlier in the year against Buffalo, and Buffalo's horrible at defending it too, where it's like, bat the ball down and like get your biggest and tallest players on the field. And it's every year we see something. It doesn't always have, it's usually end of half and stuff, but like can never figure it out. And that's why no matter what anyone says, I know the percentages are low. The game is never over. Even the Jets-Patriots game yesterday, like Garrett, you thought caught that ball, they're going to spike it, and Rodgers going to throw another Hail Mary, and like you would have liked your chances, right? Like that's just so special from Jaden to buy the time he did, and good for the Commanders. That building was the most alive I've seen it in at least 10 years, right? Since RG3's rookie year, maybe.
Yeah, it feels like they're getting the football gods are smiling upon them. Daniel Snyder is no longer the owner. They get the quarterback who, through the first 8 weeks, has given that franchise an incredible amount of juice. The maturity with which he's played has been awesome. I mean, no one thought, like literally for most of the week, no one thought he was going to play, right? The rib injury, it seemed like it was, we'll play smart. And he just, 4:30 in the morning, getting there, getting his treatment, and has a good day yesterday. And obviously the big play at the end. Chicago, I mean, again, you've seen I'm sure anybody who's listening to this pod or watching this pod has seen the video of Stevenson and gesturing to the crowd. Matt Eberflus, we're taping this on Monday afternoon, late Monday morning or early Monday afternoon. He had his press conference and he's like, Stevenson was supposed to be the guy checking Noah Brown at the end of the play. So like it just from bad to worse for Stevenson. To his credit, he has at least come out and said like, I'm going to get better from this. That was a mistake. I shameful. I apologize to my teammates. And I think McCourty brought it up on Sunday Night Football about now the veterans got to go put their arm around him and get him back because he starts for them. He's an important guy for them. You got to make sure this thing doesn't spiral for him because you still got plenty in front of you. You're 4-3. There's a playoff berth that could be there if you can find your footing quickly and continue to improve at the rate that they've improved. So I just thought that poor kid, he brought it on himself, but that's one hell of a week for him to have. And the other part about that video, just go back and you can find different things that are happening in the video. There's a blatant hold.
Yeah, he gets something new every time.
There's a blatant hold, like legitimately, like you would call the refs would. Well, I shouldn't say the refs would call it 100 times out of 100 because the officiating in this league has been wretched. And I don't even like to talk about officiating, but it's been that kind of year so far where I felt like I've had to bring it up a few times. But there's a hold. But when Brown catches the ball and they have the shot of it with him, coming into him, there's two dudes behind him that like literally one dude tackles the other dude. There's security work, whatever they are. I don't even know who they are, whether staffers, security people, the net guys. I don't know what they were, but like one guy literally just smokes the other guy, just completely tackles him. Then there's the video of it afterwards where one coach like runs up to try to chest bump one of the offensive linemen. Guy sends him flying. Like it just, I love football. There's some of these moments were pretty cool to see in the aftermath of it.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was an awesome Sunday. We're in a like legit start looking at the playoff picture here, quite soon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's going to put a wrap on this edition of the All 32. He is Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. We will see you again later in the week as we preview the Week 9 slate.